Glue idiots. Extinction Rebellion activists infiltrate Paris Motor Show to glue themselves to Ferrari supercars, according to this article. So, activists from Extinction Rebellion last night glued themselves to Ferrari supercars at the Paris Motor Show. The dozen members of XR were protesting against the individual car model that is promoted by the industry. An image showed the eco activists clutching a banner which said, Global of Self Destruction. The banner was held above three red sports cars that were covered in black paint. Of the dozen, four of the activists sat on the floor with their hands glued to the hoods of the cars. Footage shows the protesters chanting as groups of people at the motor show watched on and walked past. XR said that 11 people were arrested after the protest last night. And by the way, like just personally, if I ended up seeing something random like this happen, I'd probably just look at it and goes like, that seems kind of weird, and then just walk off. Like I wouldn't care at all. Now the thing is like this is gonna cost a pretty penny, right? Like this isn't like cheap to pay for. Interesting. So the group wrote a series of tweets after the event and explained that they had glued themselves to the stand at the Paris Motor Show for several minutes. So you only did it for a couple minutes? Like what was the even point of that? XR said the activists denounce a polluting industry which seeks to wash away its image with the help of green vehicles, but continue to promote the individual car as the transport of the future. Okay, so you're mad that a car company is going to start producing greener vehicles, so you're going to be pissed off at the greener vehicle, or basically pissed off at cars in general? Like, that doesn't seem like it really makes sense. The group also stated that they want companies to stop advertising individual vehicles and are asking that there is an important, like an improvement in public transport to reduce what they described as mobility precariousness. Sometimes you really gotta wonder about people and really gotta wonder like, are these people even real? Right? Look, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have more public transportation. And if you want to focus more on public transportation, then you need to vote for policies and policy makers that are going to lean towards that way. The reality is that no matter where you are located, people are going to want cars. Cars of any kind. Why? Some people live far away from their work that they gotta work at to pay for their bills to survive. And a lot of people don't even have the free cash or the free time to bother with trying to go down a green path. Right? Like, I feel like a lot of these activists tend to be people who, one, either don't have a job, are full time students living on loans, or living off of their family's money. Like, who are these people that can take time out of their day to do something stupid like this? Now, here's the thing, if you want to go and do something like this and protest, there's nothing wrong with that. But, like, how are you actually funding the time to go and do this? Don't you have stuff to do to make enough money to survive? Like, what are you doing in your life? So, activists from XRs say that promoting individual vehicles as transport of the future is absurd due to the current prices of electricity and fuel. The group estimated that at the moment, cars currently cost €350 per month to run. Well, technically, that's going to be probably more insurance, gas, maintenance, etc. Right? XR also stated that motors and batteries for electric and hybrid vehicles are made from materials where exploitation is extremely costly in terms of human lives, energy, and pollution. Now, here's one good thing about these activists, right? They both blame like gas and also the green energy, aka the batteries. So that is actually a cool thing that they're doing, that they actually recognize like, hey, just because you say you want to go green, that doesn't mean you need to do the green electric cars, because green electric cars themselves are not necessarily green. Also, in the press release, XR stated that motors and battery, blah, 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 blah. Okay, yeah, I already did that. It comes days after a separate group of eco activists glued themselves to the floor of a Porsche showroom in Germany. They had vowed to remain there until their demands for the government to decarbonize the German transport sector were met, but were removed and arrested yesterday. The group of 9 activists from the Scientist Rebellion group glued their hands to the floor of the Autostadt, a Volkswagen museum in the northern city of Wolfsburg, Germany. The eco-activists, most of whom wore white lab coats, remained sitting on the floor surrounded by the Porsches for nearly 24 hours and were refusing to leave after spending the night there. And some of the activists were on hunger strike, like who cares, while others complained that Volkswagen had denied their request to have a bowl so that they could go to the toilet in a decent manner while they were glued to the floor. Like, here's the thing, like, why would anyone care about you doing something in a decent manner if you're doing a protest? No. Like, there are consequences if you do want to do something like a protest, right? Be prepared to suffer the consequences if you can go down the path of protesting. Meanwhile, other Scientist Rebellion protesters threw red ink on the steps in front of the Volkswagen factory in Wolfsburg before holding up signs which read, "No new car factory." One of the activists' PhD student, Teresa Santos, tweeted that the activists remained inside the showroom after 19 hours stuck to the floor. "We're not doing this because we like it," Santos said. "We don't, but business as usual isn't enough to face the climate and ecological crisis. We're acting like we're in an emergency because we are in an emergency." Gianluca Gramada, a researcher at the Kiel Institute for the Road Economy, who is part of the protest, said in a video from the floor of the Porsche showroom that the activists are there to denounce the responsibility of Volkswagen and the climate emergency that we are facing. He continued, "Volkswagen is the largest car manufacturer in Europe and the second largest in the world, and the car sector has a huge responsibility in the climate emergency. 12% of CO2 emissions that come from the car sector. The group are calling for an introduction of a speed limit on motorways in Germany and an introduction of a pass that would allow the public to travel on public transport in the country for €9. Gramado added that we must stop CO2 emissions and we must decarbonize. The thing is, do a lot of these like climate protesters not understand that the world also uses carbon to produce oxygen? Like, do they not understand that carbon dioxide is still also used to produce oxygen, right? Like, one of the best solutions that you could probably make in terms of like climate, basically management, right, is create better natural air filters. Or basically, probably within the next few decades, you're probably going to end up having companies that are going to be able to create massive, massive air filters that will help clean up the air if you're worried about that sort of thing. The reality is, a lot of companies are not willing to risk their money, and they wouldn't put their money into things that they don't see would be lasting for a very long time. So a lot of these companies where they are buying up business locations, providing insurance to different people and businesses, banks, etc., right? They wouldn't be putting money in, I don't know, like homes that are very close to the shore. They wouldn't be providing insurance on the cheap for people. They wouldn't be providing loans at all for 30 plus years potentially. I think there might even soon like increase the amount of time that you could actually be on a mortgage for to 40 years now. So it's like if they believed, if these super uber wealthy massive corporations that only care about making money, if they believed that the road was going to end in like 5, 10 years, do you think that they would be willing to basically have contracts made out for 30, 40, 50, 60 years into the future? Do you think that they would put money, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, into places like farmland or basically like Miami, California, New York, places that have like water right next to them for like very expensive money for like those homes around there? It's like, do you think that any of those companies would be willing to do that if their money was at risk? No. So climate protesters have been wreaking havoc across Europe as they demand governments act on addressing climate change. In Knightsbridge, central London, Just Stop Oil protesters glued themselves to a road outside the world famous Harrods after the activists sprayed orange paint across the building. Earlier this month, protesters from Just Stop Oil tried to block another road and sprayed paint over an Aston Martin showroom. And last week, two protesters appeared in court a day after throwing tomato soup over the Van Gogh painting at London's National Gallery. The painting itself was protected by a screen, but damage was caused to the frame, according to the gallery in Trafalgar Square. Now, here's the thing, too, right? With the whole the two protesters that threw the tomato soup at the Van Gogh painting. I saw a podcast, I think by the PBD podcast with yeah, with Patrick Bet-David as the host. He actually had these two individuals on, and it was a very interesting situation because one of those protesters, which by the way, respected them for going on there and like talking about it, but one of those protesters has like really no experience as living like an adult life at all, which was like really surprising to find out and like hear. Like they basically didn't really have like bills really. They were just living off of student loans. They never really worked a day in their life. They just basically lived like basically I think on campus, going to school, spending their free time doing this protest stuff is and also believes that the road is basically going to end in like 5 years. Like it was a very very odd viewpoint. I mean, respect to them for going on there, but it's just like to see such young people end up basically truly believing that the road is going to end within 5 years, but also has like no experience in like adult life at all is a really sad thing to see, right? In Rome, furious drivers have resorted to dragging away a group of eco protesters who sparked fury by halting traffic on a busy motorway in Rome. Rush hour motorists were blockaded on the Gran Riccardo Ring Road outside the Italian capital Monday by last generation activists who unfurled large banners protesting fossil fuels. The disruption led to angry scenes as drivers got out of their vehicles to remonstrate with the eco zealots and plead with them to get out of their way. Some took matters in their own hands, physically dragging protesters out of the way. One man on a motorbike begged to be let through, loudly arguing, "I have to go, I'm a doctor." But a female activist refused to grant him permission to get through without seeing his medical identification and demanded he handed it over. He eventually brandished his ID card, and the demonstrator allowed him to bypass the human barricade. And this person says, charge them with the repair costs, morons. Okay, so best rated. That's people's property they have damaged, and the irony is generally Ferraris do less mileage on the road than any normal car. These are just jealous individuals who think the road owes them a living for doing nothing. And the funny thing is, that's kind of true, right? Because Ferraris, typically the people who do buy Ferraris, pretty much never drive them. Listen, they should have to pay for the damages. They are starting to get bolder due to not severe enough punishment from courts. What will it take for courts to do something about this rude, selfish manner of protest? Charge them for the damage they have caused at the cars. If they can't or won't pay, jail time for them. Let's see. Criminal damage, plain and simple. Make them pay for the cars. That might deter them in the future. They seem to have a cavalier attitude to other people's property. My goodness, their message is important, but these stunts are just stupid, wrong, and detract from their cause. Now, here's the thing to also keep in mind, too. One, this is why companies, personal people, all that kind of stuff should always have insurance in case of random stuff like this. But also, if you're someone that wants to do like a protest, never go and damage property, right? Because if you were to go and damage property and you were to be found guilty of that stuff, that could financially destroy you for the rest of your life, depending on how costly it is. Like, be so careful. Just do a respectful, like, non violent protest, right? That's all you got to do. Now, you may not really get much results from that, but at least your life won't be destroyed financially. But I don't know. Feel free to give your thoughts. I just thought that this was kind of funny, sad, and a really bad idea financially speaking.